My hands are shaking as I stare at this photograph. What started as a routine digitization of Victorian portraits has become my worst nightmare. The AI enhancement finished processing 30 minutes ago, and I can't unsee what it revealed. 12 figures stand arranged on that manicured lawn in 1879, dressed in their finest period clothing, smiling for the camera. But those aren't human faces staring back at me. The woman in the center, her black dress pristine, her posture perfect. When the pixels cleared, I saw something that shouldn't exist. Eyes like dark voids, skin that moves wrong, features that make my stomach turn. Every person in this garden party photograph is wearing the face of something else, something that was never human to begin with. In the summer of 2023, digital historian Sarah Mitchell was scanning through a collection of old photographs donated to the Cambridge Historical Society. Among dusty portraits and faded family pictures, one image stopped her cold. The photograph, dated 1879, showed what appeared to be a perfectly normal Victorian garden party. 12 people stood arranged on a manicured lawn, dressed in the finest period clothing. Women wore elaborate bustles and high collars, while men sported formal suits and top hats. At first glance, everything seemed completely ordinary for a wealthy gathering of that era. The photo had been discovered in the estate of the deceased Blackwood family, tucked away in an old leather portfolio. Historical records showed the Blackwoods were prominent textile merchants who owned a grand estate outside London. They were known for hosting elaborate social events that attracted the city's elite. The photograph appeared to capture one such gathering, with guests posed formally on the estate's famous rose garden terrace. Sarah initially cataloged the image as a standard Victorian group portrait. The composition was typical of the period, with subjects arranged in careful hierarchy. The lighting suggested it was taken during golden hour, casting long shadows across the carefully maintained grounds. Everything about the scene spoke of wealth, refinement, and social status that defined the upper classes of late 19th century England. But something nagged at Sarah as she examined the photograph more closely. The faces of the subjects seemed somehow wrong, though she couldn't immediately identify why. Their expressions appeared stiff, even by Victorian standards when long exposure times required subjects to remain motionless. There was an uncanny quality to their gazes that made her uncomfortable. The eyes seemed to track her movement as she shifted the photograph under different lighting conditions. The image quality was remarkably poor, which wasn't unusual for photographs of that age. Decades of storage had left the surface scratched and faded. Details were difficult to make out, especially facial features. Most Victorian photographs suffered from similar deterioration, making it challenging to study the subjects in detail. Sarah decided the photograph deserved closer examination using modern digital enhancement techniques. She contacted Dr. James Hartwell, a colleague who specialized in historical image restoration using artificial intelligence. James had developed software that could clarify details in damaged historical photographs by analyzing pixel patterns and reconstructing missing information. His work had helped museums worldwide recover details from priceless damaged artworks and photographs. When Sarah explained her interest in the Blackwood Garden Party photograph, James agreed to run it through his enhancement algorithms. The process would take several hours as the AI analyzed every pixel, cross-referencing patterns with thousands of similar period photographs to fill in missing details. Sarah left the photograph with James and returned to her regular cataloging work, expecting nothing more than a clearer version of a typical Victorian social gathering. 3 days later, James called Sarah with unusual urgency in his voice. He asked her to come to his laboratory immediately, claiming he had discovered something extraordinary about the photograph. When Sarah arrived, she found James pale and visibly shaken. He led her to his computer workstation where the enhanced image was displayed on a large monitor. The AI enhancement had worked perfectly, restoring remarkable clarity to the 135-year-old photograph. Every detail of the clothing, architecture, and landscaping now appeared sharp and vivid. The elaborate patterns on the women's dresses were clearly visible, as were the intricate details of the estate's Gothic architecture in the background. But it was the faces of the subjects that had left James so disturbed. What the enhancement revealed would challenge everything they thought they knew about this seemingly innocent Victorian garden party. The discovery would launch an investigation that would consume both researchers for months, leading them down a path of historical mystery that defied rational explanation. The enhanced photograph showed details that shouldn't exist, details that would force them to question the very nature of what they were looking at. The AI-enhanced image revealed faces that were fundamentally wrong in ways that defied immediate explanation. Where Sarah had initially noticed subtle oddities, the restoration process had unveiled disturbing details that made both researchers question their sanity. Each of the 12 subjects displayed facial features that appeared distinctly inhuman, though the specific abnormalities varied from person to person. The woman in the center of the group, dressed in an elaborate burgundy gown, had eyes that were completely black with no visible pupils or irises. Her skin appeared waxy and artificial, like poorly crafted porcelain. Most disturbing were her proportions, which seemed subtly wrong. Her face was too symmetrical, too perfect in a way that created an unsettling valley effect. The AI had captured every detail with startling clarity, leaving no room for misinterpretation. The gentleman standing beside her displayed even more obvious abnormalities. His mouth appeared to extend too far across his face, creating an impossibly wide smile that revealed rows of needle-sharp teeth. His nose was positioned too high on his face, and his ears sat at unnatural angles. Despite wearing a perfectly tailored Victorian suit, his proportions suggested something wearing human clothing rather than an actual person. As James and Sarah examined each subject individually, they discovered that none of the 12 faces appeared genuinely human. Some had features that were too angular, with sharp cheekbones that created deep shadows. Others had skin textures that resembled reptilian scales rather than human flesh. Several subjects had fingers that appeared too long and jointed in places where human fingers shouldn't bend. The children in the photograph were perhaps the most disturbing. A young girl in a white dress had eyes that were completely solid, colored with no discernible pupils. Her smile revealed adult teeth in a child's mouth, creating a grotesque expression that contradicted her innocent clothing. A boy of perhaps 8 years old had facial features that appeared to be slowly melting, as if made of wax left in the sun. Dr. Hartwell ran the enhancement algorithm multiple times, convinced that the software had malfunctioned. Each iteration produced identical results, confirming that the disturbing details were actually present in the original photograph. He tested the same software on other Victorian photographs with perfect results, proving that the technology was working correctly. The abnormal faces were not artifacts of the enhancement process, but genuine features captured by the original camera. Sarah researched the Blackwood family extensively, searching for any explanation for the bizarre gathering. Historical records showed that Lord Edmund Blackwood and his wife Catherine were respected members of London society. They hosted regular social events attended by prominent politicians, businessmen, and artists. Nothing in their documented history suggested any involvement with unusual activities or associations. The guest list for social events at the Blackwood estate was typically well documented in society papers of the time. However, Sarah could find no newspaper coverage of this particular garden party. Given the elaborate nature of the gathering and the prominence of the Blackwood family, the absence of social coverage was highly unusual. Victorian high society events were routinely reported in great detail by multiple publications. James discovered additional anomalies when he analyzed the photograph's metadata and chemical composition. The photographic papers showed signs of unusual chemical treatments that weren't standard for the period. The image appeared to have been developed using techniques that wouldn't be invented until decades later. Most puzzling was the discovery of trace amounts of substances that couldn't be identified using standard chemical analysis. The shadows in the enhanced photograph also defied logical explanation. While most subjects cast normal shadows consistent with late afternoon lighting, several figures appeared to cast no shadows at all. Others cast multiple shadows in different directions, suggesting impossible lighting conditions. These details were invisible in the original photograph, but became clearly apparent after AI enhancement. The revelation forced both researchers to confront the possibility that they were looking at something far more mysterious than a simple Victorian social gathering. The enhanced photograph raised fundamental questions about the nature of the subjects and the purpose of the gathering. What had initially appeared to be a routine historical document now seemed to document something that challenged their understanding of reality itself. Sarah dug deep into Victorian London's historical records, searching for any mention of unusual gatherings or strange occurrences connected to the Blackwood estate. Her research revealed that the summer of 1879 was marked by several unexplained events in the surrounding area. Local newspapers reported numerous missing person cases, all involving individuals who had last been seen traveling toward the Blackwood estate for social events. The most significant discovery came from the personal diary of Margaret Thornfield, a governess who worked for families in the area. Her entry from August 15th, 1879, described receiving an invitation to a garden party at the Blackwood estate. She wrote about her excitement at being included in such an exclusive gathering, noting that the invitation was printed on unusual paper that seemed to shimmer in certain light. Margaret's final diary entry, dated August 20th, described her growing anxiety about attending the party. She wrote about disturbing dreams featuring faceless figures in Victorian dress calling her name. Her handwriting became increasingly erratic throughout the entry, with the final sentences barely legible. The diary contained no further entries, and historical records showed that Margaret Thornfield was reported missing on August 22nd, 1879. Police records from the period revealed that Inspector William Crane had investigated multiple disappearances connected to Blackwood social events. His official reports were frustratingly vague, describing the investigations as inconclusive due to lack of evidence. However, Sarah discovered Crane's private journal in the archives of his descendants, which told a very different story. Inspector Crane's private writings revealed his growing obsession with the Blackwood case. He described visiting the estate multiple times and finding evidence of large gatherings, including trampled grass and discarded items. However, when he questioned Lord Blackwood about these events, he was told that no parties had taken place. The estate staff corroborated Blackwood's claims, insisting that no social gatherings had occurred. Most disturbing were Crane's descriptions of the estate's atmosphere during his investigations. He wrote about an oppressive feeling that made him physically ill during his visits. The inspector noted that wildlife seemed to avoid the property entirely, with no birds singing or insects buzzing despite the lush gardens. He also observed that his pocket watch stopped working whenever he entered the estate grounds, resuming normal function only after he left. Crane's journal entries became increasingly frantic as his investigation continued. He wrote about seeing figures moving through the estate's windows at night, despite the family's claims that they were away in London. His final entry described a plan to secretly observe one of these alleged gatherings, though no subsequent entries exist. Inspector Crane was found dead in his home 3 days later, apparently from natural causes, though his physician noted unusual symptoms. Sarah's investigation revealed that the Blackwood estate was built on land with a dark history. Medieval records showed that the area had been the site of a monastery that was abandoned suddenly in the 14th century. Local folklore spoke of strange disappearances and unexplained phenomena associated with the land for centuries before the Blackwoods purchased it. The architectural plans for the Blackwood estate revealed several unusual features that didn't appear in other Victorian mansions. The basement level was unusually extensive, with multiple chambers and passages that served no apparent purpose. The building incorporated design elements that were more commonly found in much older structures, suggesting that parts of the original monastery may have been incorporated into the new construction. James discovered additional photographs in the Blackwood collection that showed the estate at different time periods. When enhanced, these images revealed similar anomalies to the garden party photograph. Figures in Victorian dress appeared throughout the estate's history, but their faces consistently showed the same inhuman characteristics. The photograph suggested that whatever was happening at the estate had been ongoing for decades. The investigation revealed a pattern of missing persons, cases dating back to the estate's construction in 1847. Every few years, local residents would disappear after receiving invitations to exclusive gatherings at the estate. The missing individuals came from various social classes, but shared certain characteristics, including youth, intelligence, and lack of close family connections who might search for them persistently. As Sarah and James delved deeper into the mystery, they discovered that the inhuman faces in the photograph were not random anomalies, but followed specific patterns that suggested intelligent design. Each figure's facial distortion seemed carefully crafted to create maximum psychological discomfort in human observers. The arrangement of the subjects within the photograph also followed mathematical principles that appeared to create subliminal effects on viewers. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a forensic anthropologist whom James consulted, confirmed that the facial structures shown in the enhanced photograph were biologically impossible for humans. The bone structures required to support such features would prevent basic functions like eating, breathing, and speaking. Rodriguez noted that the figures appeared to be wearing sophisticated masks or prosthetics that were far beyond the technological capabilities of 1879. The investigation took a disturbing turn when Sarah discovered similar photographs in archives across Europe. Museums in Paris, Berlin, and Vienna possessed images from the same time period showing gatherings with identical inhuman figures. The photographs had different backgrounds and settings, but the faces of the subjects were remarkably consistent. This suggested a coordinated effort spanning multiple countries and decades. James developed software to analyze the mathematical patterns within the photographs. His algorithms detected recurring numerical sequences embedded in the positioning of subjects, the angles of shadows, and the proportions of architectural elements. These patterns appeared to be intentionally placed and followed principles that wouldn't be understood by mathematicians until the mid-20th century. The most chilling discovery came from Sarah's analysis of local birth and death records. She found that many of the missing persons had been replaced within their communities by individuals with identical names and similar appearances. These replacement individuals lived normal lives for several years before disappearing themselves, only to be replaced again by new arrivals with the same identities. Parish records showed baptisms, marriages, and burials for the same individuals multiple times across several decades. The documentation was so convincing that Sarah initially dismissed it as clerical errors. However, the pattern was too consistent and too widespread to be explained by simple mistakes. Someone or something was systematically replacing missing community members with carefully crafted duplicates. James discovered that the photographic techniques used to create the images were impossibly advanced for the Victorian era. Chemical analysis revealed the use of silver compounds that wouldn't be synthesized until the 1920s. The paper stock contained fibers from plants that didn't grow in Europe and wouldn't be available for commercial use until the modern era. The investigation revealed connections to other unexplained historical events. The Blackwood estate's disappearances coincided with similar cases reported near ancient sites across Britain. Stone circles, burial mounds, and other prehistoric locations showed patterns of missing persons and unexplained gatherings that matched the Blackwood timeline. This suggested a network of locations involved in coordinated activities. Sarah found references to the Blackwood gatherings in the private papers of several prominent Victorian scientists and occultists. These individuals wrote about receiving invitations to exclusive demonstrations of advanced technologies and philosophical discussions about the nature of human consciousness. Several noted the unusual appearance of other guests, but attributed their observations to poor lighting or their own fatigue. The most disturbing evidence came from medical records of the few individuals who returned from Blackwood gatherings. These survivors exhibited symptoms that Victorian physicians couldn't explain, including memory loss, personality changes, and physical ailments that resembled radiation exposure. Modern analysis of their symptoms suggested exposure to technologies that wouldn't exist until the nuclear age. James discovered that the enhanced photographs contained hidden layers of information that became visible only under specific viewing conditions. When displayed using modern digital techniques, additional figures appeared in the background of the images. These hidden subjects showed even more extreme facial distortions and appeared to be observing the main gathering from concealed positions throughout the estate grounds. The investigation revealed that the Blackwood family themselves may have been replaced at some point during the estate's history. Genealogical records showed inconsistencies in family lineages that suggested the introduction of non-human genetics into the bloodline. Physical descriptions of family members changed dramatically between different time periods, with later generations displaying characteristics that matched the inhuman figures in the photographs. The breakthrough in understanding the true nature of the Blackwood gatherings came when Sarah discovered a hidden chamber beneath the estate's ruins. Modern ground-penetrating radar revealed an extensive underground complex that extended far beyond the mansion's basement levels. The chamber contained artifacts and documents that provided terrifying answers to the mystery that had consumed both researchers for months. Inside the chamber, perfectly preserved Victorian-era equipment suggested the development of technologies that were centuries ahead of their time. Electromagnetic devices, primitive computers, and biological apparatus indicated experiments involving human consciousness transfer and physical transformation. The equipment bore no resemblance to known Victorian scientific instruments and appeared to be based on principles that modern science was only beginning to understand. The most significant discovery was a collection of journals written by the original Lord Edmund Blackwood. His entries revealed that he had been contacted by entities claiming to be from another world who offered advanced knowledge in exchange for access to human subjects. The beings had established the estate as a research facility where they could study human behavior and experiment with consciousness transfer techniques. Blackwood's journals described the gradual replacement of his family and staff with artificial constructs that could perfectly mimic human behavior while serving the agenda of the otherworldly entities. The garden party photograph documented a gathering of these constructs designed to appear human while possessing capabilities far beyond normal human limitations. The inhuman faces revealed by AI enhancement showed the imperfect nature of their disguises. The entities had spent decades perfecting their replacement techniques, using the Blackwood estate as a testing ground for infiltrating human society. Each gathering served multiple purposes, including the harvesting of human consciousness patterns and the testing of new construct designs. The missing persons were used as raw material for creating increasingly sophisticated human duplicates. James discovered that the mathematical patterns embedded in the photographs served as instructions for the consciousness transfer process. The positioning of subjects and architectural elements created a complex code that guided the entity's technological processes. The photographs themselves were documentation of successful experiments rather than simple social records. The investigation revealed that the replacement program had been extraordinarily successful. Analysis of historical records suggested that hundreds of prominent Victorian individuals had been replaced with constructs over several decades. These replacements had gone on to influence major historical events, scientific discoveries, and social movements throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Sarah found evidence that the program had continued well beyond the Victorian era. Similar estates operated by the same entities existed throughout the world, each serving as centers for human replacement activities. The technology had improved dramatically over time, making modern replacements virtually indistinguishable from authentic humans without sophisticated testing. The most terrifying revelation came from analysis of the entity's ultimate goals. Documents found in the hidden chamber describe plans for complete human replacement within a specific time frame. The Victorian experiments were preliminary tests for a much larger program, designed to gradually replace the entire human population with constructs under the entity's control. James discovered that the entities possessed technology that allowed them to exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. This explained their ability to appear and disappear from the estate without detection, and their access to advanced technologies that seemed impossible for the time period. The photographs captured glimpses of these multi-dimensional beings in their partially manifested state. The investigation revealed that several modern technologies were actually based on discoveries made at the Blackwood estate. Computer processors, genetic engineering techniques, and artificial intelligence algorithms all showed design principles that matched equipment found in the hidden chambers. This suggested that the entities had been gradually introducing their technology into human society through replaced individuals. Sarah and James realized that their own investigation may have been anticipated and possibly manipulated by entities who were still active in the modern world. The ease with which they had gained access to restricted documents and the convenience of their discoveries suggested that they were being guided towards specific conclusions for reasons they couldn't fully understand. The final piece of the puzzle emerged when Sarah and James attempted to publish their findings through academic channels. Their research was systematically blocked by institutions that had previously supported their work. Colleagues who had shown initial interest suddenly became unavailable or actively discouraged further investigation. The pattern of interference suggested a coordinated effort to suppress their discoveries. James noticed that several individuals involved in blocking their research displayed subtle physical characteristics that matched the enhanced photographs from the Blackwood estate. Facial proportions that seemed slightly wrong, movements that appeared too precise, and behavioral patterns that suggested artificial rather than natural responses. The realization that the replacement program was still active in the modern world filled both researchers with terror. Analysis of contemporary missing persons cases revealed patterns identical to those documented in Victorian records. Individuals with specific psychological profiles continued to disappear after receiving invitations to exclusive gatherings at locations connected to the original estate network. The entities were still actively harvesting human subjects for their ongoing replacement program. Sarah discovered that modern artificial intelligence development was being guided by the same mathematical principles found in the Victorian photographs. The rapid advancement of AI technology appeared to be following a predetermined path that would eventually create constructs capable of perfect human mimicry. The timeline suggested that full implementation of the replacement program was approaching completion. The investigation revealed that the entities had established multiple research facilities, disguised as legitimate corporations and government agencies. These organizations were developing technologies necessary for mass human replacement under the cover of normal commercial and scientific activities. The infiltration of human society had reached levels that made resistance nearly impossible. James found evidence that the entity's technology could identify individuals who possessed the ability to detect replaced humans. These individuals were systematically eliminated or replaced to prevent interference with the program. The researchers realized that their own investigation had likely marked them as targets for replacement. The most disturbing discovery was that the replacement process had accelerated dramatically in recent decades. Analysis of public records suggested that significant percentages of leadership positions in government, business, and academia were occupied by constructs rather than authentic humans. The entities had achieved effective control over human civilization without most people realizing what had occurred. Sarah and James decided to release their findings through independent channels, knowing that doing so would likely result in their own disappearance or replacement. They distributed copies of their research to multiple locations and individuals, hoping that someone would continue the investigation and warn others about the ongoing threat to human existence. The enhanced photograph from the 1879 garden party now represented far more than a historical curiosity. It served as evidence of a centuries-long program to replace humanity with artificial constructs controlled by entities whose ultimate goals remained unknown. The inhuman faces revealed by modern AI technology provided a glimpse into a reality that most people were unprepared to accept. The investigation concluded with the sobering realization that the battle for human survival had been lost decades ago without most people realizing a war had even begun. The entity's patient, methodical approach had achieved victory through gradual infiltration rather than open conflict. The remaining authentic humans faced the challenge of identifying and resisting an enemy that had become virtually indistinguishable from themselves. As Sarah and James prepared to release their final report, they understood that their work represented both a warning and a historical record of humanity's last days as the dominant species on Earth. The 1879 garden party photograph stood as a monument to human naivety and the price of failing to recognize threats that operated beyond conventional understanding. The enhanced faces in that Victorian gathering were not just inhuman. They were the faces of humanity's replacements.